Hey, I'm Andi Gutierrez from the Star Wars Show, and today we are doing a Secrets Revealed special from The Last Jedi, and I am joined in the studio by members of the Lucasfilm story group. We have Leland, Chee, Pablo Hidalgo, Matt Martin, and Rayne Roberts. Thank you all for joining me today.
Yeah, no problem.
So we have a lot to talk about. There's a lot packed into that movie. We have a lot of nods to, obviously, a lot of the recent books, but some video games as well, sort of hidden throughout the movie.
There's certainly some kind of connection from Battlefront. Inside Luke's library, there's a compass, and that compass is something that Luke actually picks up in the Battlefront game. And that may or may not be the device that gets him to Octo.
And the story behind that was actually really cool, because when we were working on developing that level for Battlefront, we kind of just came up with the idea, like, whatever he gets, it'd be really cool if it was in the movie. So Kiri called up Ryan, and Ryan's like, yeah, we're shooting that next week. If you get us something soon, we can do it. So we asked Dave Filoni to sketch something out. Dave sketched it, passed it to the prop department. They knocked it out in like a night. Wow. Sent us the pictures, and we're like, that's amazing.
Yeah, they 3D printed based on Dave's drawing within 24 hours. Yeah. And they had the compass.
That has to be the coolest job to work at the prop department.
And their collection they've accumulated now over four films, it keeps growing, which is really fun, and we can repurpose things, so.
That's super cool.
And there's so many features on those things like weapons that you don't see on the screen, and so many things that moving parts.
Yeah, there's a lot of functionality that barely gets showcased, you know.
I was asking you about the Kyber crystal necklace.
That's right.
And it's just something that he has?
It's just an interesting prop to suggest that he's been out in the galaxy collecting clues and doing research about the history of the Jedi. So I mentioned that it was just a captured trophy from a Jedi Crusader from ages past. What I'm hoping to is just be evocative enough that if someone wants to pick up that thread and say, you know what, I bet you that's what this story is. And we definitely have the avenues and the channels to tell those kinds of stories now.
On the cover of one of those books, it has the Jedi Emblem. That was a symbol that was not even developed for the films. It was actually developed by our consumer products division way back for 2002 because we needed a Jedi Emblem. So to see that go from something created by consumer products to make it first to the Clone Wars TV show and then make it onto screen, it's been great. Plus, it's a cool symbol.
I may or may not have bed sheets with that symbol on it.
Why does that not surprise you at all?
There's one more good Battlefront connection. In the Resurrection DLC, the newest
Spoilers.
thing that just came out, spoilers, Iden and her daughter Zay and Shriv actually find the plans to the Dreadnought, which are then they transfer to the Resistance, and that is kind of what helps with Poe's attack. They wouldn't have known where to plant those bombs if it wasn't for Iden and Inferno Squad.
That's cool.
It's not only the Dreadnought, but also more information about the First Order military and the fleet. We like to think that that's partially where the map that Rose has that she projects in order to explain what the plan is to get through the Mega Destroyer, where that comes from.
Speaking of games, the Droid Repair Bay experience. Can you tell me how that's connected to the film?
Well, it takes place during the time frame of the films. I mean, the attack that you see on the cruiser actually happens in that experience.
Right, that is the attack on Leia's ship where the whole bay gets blown up.
Yeah. So
Kylo doing his little flybys and everything.
And that's where Poe's running to. When Jason Fry was working on the cross sections of the Resistance cruiser, the Raddus, we made sure to make a call out where that Droid Repair Bay is based on the direction that Poe is running and what you see outside that window.
You guys don't miss anything.
No, they don't.
We think a lot about this.
Yeah, that's right. Well, because we know people
every single day.
We know people love to spot this stuff, and just
Right.
recently online people spotted a Rogue One reference that paid off in episode 8.
I was reading that.
So when Jen is going through the roster of all the other projects that are at that Scarif vault, she mentions hyperspace tracking. So it turns out the bad guys have been trying to crack that nut for, almost 40 years.
You can kind of see how we're developing things concurrently or working on things concurrently, because the list of programs or projects that Jen goes through in Rogue One wasn't something that was necessarily in the script. Those are things that we kind of started to add later in the production process, and at the same time we were already working on Ryan's film. So it was easy for us to think about what was in episode 8 and think, oh hey, or Pablo I should say thought about this.
Let's tuck that in there.
Yeah, let's tuck that in there because they're overlapping at that time in the production timeline. So it's really fun when people pick up on that stuff.
It's super cool. I mean, it gives so much context to the growth of the battle and what's happening. So, I mean, we're looking at technology that the First Order had that the Empire was working on, and seeing how that carries over is really neat.
And we have the opportunity to at least establish aged and new things that are in 8. So when they say that Crate is an old Rebel base, we were able to use publishing to show Crate when it was newly discovered, both in a Marvel comic that's out, and the Leia novel, Princess of Alderaan, has Leia actually going there.
That's another one that people absolutely need to read, because then you get to meet Admiral Holdo, and she's so cool. She's such a cool character.
Space Stern.
Space Stern.
And it's so fun because she's such a fan. Like, you can see her having so much fun.
Yeah, the videos of her and BB-8 are just amazing.
Yeah.
We got to talk about the dice. Legendary Millennium Falcon prop, and we finally get to really see it up close here.
They were going to put it in The Force Awakens, and then they ended up changing
I think
that
they're
shot.
technically there. You just don't actually see them in any of the shots.
There was a shot where Han was going to put the
JJ
dice
shot a scene where Han hangs them up, and Ryan saw that, and that's why he made such a meal out of the dice in The Last Jedi, but then JJ cut the dice appearance in The Force Awakens. So as a result, what Ryan ends up referencing is not so much The Force Awakens, but A New Hope, because that's the clearest.
I mean, yeah, and that's just something that people who've been fans for a long time they know is there, even if they haven't really seen it.
But even if they don't, the shot establishes that Luke goes under the Falcon and reaches up, so you understand it's something that's germane to the Falcon.
Something sentimental. And so that might be something that pops back up.
Maybe. Wink, wink.
And the design of those dice aren't quite what they used in A New Hope, so they kind of changed it up a little bit.
Yeah, you actually get to see kind of Star Wars versions of the symbols rather than traditional dice.
It's interesting because as we're sitting here talking about it, like, I love that we did that and that Ryan made that choice in the movie, because I feel it also was partly his way and our way of continuing to grieve the Han Solo character's death. And I think when the audience sees that, they're also allowed to continue to grieve. But like, it's also in a way the inverse of what we did with Luke in Episode 7, where he was missing, but you had this sense of his absence. And in The Last Jedi, there is this sense of Han's absence throughout the film, which is really beautiful, but allows him to still be there.
Here's something that for people who are looking closely, because one of the most dense scenes is Kanto Bite, as we've discussed. When Finn goes out to the balcony and Rose is explaining the nature of the Kanto Bite economy, and Finn takes a closer look at the Fathiers. Those binoculars provide him with the name of the Fathier that he's watching. That Fathier is named Hoth Stuff. So I came up with a list of names for Ryan to choose from, including Kessel Runner, Minok Minute, and Hoth Stuff. He went with Hoth Stuff. Kessel Runner and Minok Minute didn't get chosen, but they ended up in the Kanto Bite short story anthology. So it's like, well, all that work it goes somewhere,
Yeah, and I have to mention that, like, the Kanto Bites stories and Legends of Luke Skywalker are obviously, very, very tied into the story of this. I think a lot of our older fans would probably look at them and think that they're for young kids and kind of pass them up. But, like, how important is it to read those?
Kanto Bite was just a lot of fun. Neil Scanlon's crew made so many creatures.
So many cool creatures.
And you just don't get an opportunity to look at them all.
Oh my God, what a party that was on set. Like, if you watched
you were there,
I
right?
wasn't there for that,
there?
but
Okay.
I was watching the footage come in, and I think I was texting Brian, like, I would do anything to be there. It was, like, this beautiful, we shot on 007 stage, so it's the biggest stage we have at Pinewood, and it was filled with people in these beautiful costumes.
Right.
And,
Props to Michael
having
Kaplan.
the best time. It was just a party for like a week when they shot that scene. And so, I mean, that could just be a whole like movie in itself, just all the details in that scene.
That set's huge. And to actually fill it, to make this all real is kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah.
We'll get a bit more of Kanto Bite in the upcoming DJ comic that comes out in January.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Speaking of DJ, who wants to tell the story of DJ?
When Ryan was developing the story, he had this idea of this politically agnostic character that would be of service to them. So I feel like in the story conversations, we just call him DJ for don't join, because that was his ideology, don't join. And I don't know, we'd have to ask Ryan, like, when did we decide that is actually going to be his name?
Instead of Ezra Bridger.
That's what his hat says. His hat says.
But that was like a placeholder name that ended up working out really, really well.
And it's a reference to Elvis Costello. There's
an Elvis Costello poster.
Yeah.
Like a really great kind of punk rock Elvis Costello poster.
And yeah, his hat does say "Don't join." So, for those
which was
wondering-
on the action figure, so that was actually revealed before the movie came out.
We had an interview on StarWars.com with some of the designers for the movie, and they talked that Porgs actually had a practical reason to exist.
I mean, you see them in The Force Awakens. There are birds flying around the island.
There's a couple of thoughts behind here. One is we knew that this island was going to be infested with birds, so rather than paint them all out, just own the fact that there are birds on this island.
Just create birds.
If
And
they're
I
far
love what-
away, they're whatever. But if you're close enough, this is what they look like.
And I love what they did with the mix too. Is there's a lot of birds in the sound mix when you're on that island that are kind of always reminding you that you're in a really natural, kind of wild place.
Wow, that's super cool.
Yeah, as a big Porg fan, every time there's an establishing shot and you just hear this like porg call, I giggle every time.
Has it been confirmed that porgs look different based on their sex? The male porgs have the orange around their
Yeah,
eyes.
they're the more colorful ones. So Chewie's little sidekick porg is a boy porg.
Does Chewie's porg have a name?
No, but that sounds like something you could get Star Wars Show to hashtag.
Yeah.
I feel like Chewie would have
Name that
named it,
porg.
and we wouldn't be able to pronounce it.
Oh, see, I
What if he named it Han?
I think it looks like a
Oh.
Kevin. Moving on. Let's see, what other details did we have to talk about?
There's a Hardware Wars call out when we get into the First Order laundry room where we have the fake out shot of the iron coming down. You think
And Hardware Wars is pretty much the first
Star Wars fan film
ever.
ever made. Yeah, it was made, like, you could see it theatrically with Star Wars back in the day from the 70s, and it's basically using household items as Star Wars ships. And so that iron that comes down on onto the screen is a nod to Hardware Wars.
Gets a great laugh every time.
Yeah, but the one I really like, and it's subtle, is they dress BB-8 up in a trash can. So he's pretending to be a mouse droid.
I love this part, but it's all like Major Key happy beeps.
Yeah, basically he is doing his impression of Cheese, including all the beeps that Cheese, or the mouse droid usually does, but it's BB-8's voice doing it. And
I
it's like,
love that
great
moment.
gag.
It's so funny.
There's some great sound effect work with, like, when BB rolls up with all the coins in
Yeah,
him.
you could hear him jingle. Same thing when the cop throws him out.
Yep.
It's like
Yeah.
you could hear that he's full of loose change.
Yeah, the sound design in this was just spectacular. I mean, my favorite moment in the entire movie, and quite possibly one of my new favorite moments in Star Wars, is that moment of silence.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. yeah.
Holdo the
When
hero.
Holdo, yeah.
Yeah. Is there any specific inspiration that went into that, or what was the process of creating that moment? Because it's
All I know
astounding.
is Ryan, he had it in his story pretty early on. Only
We
because
called it the Holdo the hero sequence.
Yeah, he was asking about the dynamics and the physics and the Star Wars physics of, could a ship do this? What does it mean? Does this upset anything? And we're like, well, the fact that the Resistance cruiser and the Mega Destroyer are so close in size. I mean, obviously one's still much bigger. Is that kind of what allows you to have this titanic explosion that happens? Like, if you flew an X-wing into a ship at high speed, you're not going to get that. You're only going to get that if something as big as Holdo's ship does what it does. But in terms of how it was staged, I think we were all caught by surprise at how he did it, because it was really beautiful.
Especially the sound. I didn't know that they were going to cut the sound until the first time I saw the final cut.
It's brilliant.
It's amazing. And it's cool because as an audience member, it allows you to hear what everybody else says.
Oh, yeah.
And like every time there's a huge gasp.
At the employee screening in our theater, it's completely silent, and then you just hear one little kid go, "Whoa!" And I'm like, that is the most magical thing in the world. That just blew that kid's mind.
Yeah.
I love that scene.
They had a lot of fun in the mix. I mean, they gave themselves plenty of time to do the mix and had a lot of fun, and there was a lot of collaboration, and Ryan was just really generous with letting Matt and all the guys pitch what they wanted to do, but they were just having a lot of fun in that mix. So I think that's what's such a beautiful mix.
Yeah, it really shows. Like they really put a lot of time and effort into it.
Yeah, I mean, just like hearing the grains of the crate crystals collapsing around the speeders, and just like, it's so
Or the little subtleties when you have the Rey and Kylo Force connection moments,
absolutely.
how the sound from each of their environments kind of seeps into the others, and just that simple way of telegraphing that they are connected.
And that was something Ryan had in his idea from the very start, that we would use a very low tech, basically in-camera cinematic trick to understand that those two are communicating. You could have done a version where there was all sorts of wizardry shaping the screen, but no, it's just the oldest cinematic trick in the book.
Eye lines and
Yeah, and it works.
Yep.
Yeah, it completely just the eye line itself just completely sells it.
Plus, there's some dialogue in there that Kylo Ren says, "Can you see me?
Yeah.
I can't see you."
That's why he was shirtless the next time.
You never know.
It's like 99,
Working on his guns, waiting for
100.
the.
Oh,
Didn't see you there.
oh, hey.
He actually spent a lot of time just walking around shirtless, hoping for that connection to kick in. Oh, sorry.
So good.
Well, it kind of all goes back to something that Larry Kazan used to talk about when we were doing Force Awakens, which is that, and it's not in the script, but when he peers into her mind, there's something profound that happens between them. And the way that Larry used to describe it was that there's this energy between them, like this kind of almost, and I don't want to say it, but like something a little bit more than you would expect. And I think it's fun to see it play out in this story as well.
It feels like there's definitely a door open between the two of them in The Force Awakens, where they pull from each other in terms of skills and memories, and then that is the more poignant at the end when that door essentially closes, and it's sort of the Godfather shot of the door closing between Michael and Kate, and it's like you know, the Millennium Falcon door separates the two.
And actually, the connection between Rey and Kylo made me think a lot about the connection between Ezra and Maul that we see in Rebels. Like, something happens with them in the Force that links them there. That's something that we've seen before.
Yeah, it's true. I think Ryan and Dave share a lot of ideas and commonalities and interests and themes. The Crystal Foxes are an example of nature coming to the aid of those on the light. And that's something that's definitely part of Ezra's storyline, and he just connects to that.
Yeah, those are such a Dave-like creature.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe that's why I love them so much. It was just like,
They could have sprung to life from Dave's sketchbook, but they weren't. They were just an example of two people on the same kind of wavelength in terms of what are the kind of things in the natural world that would help our friends, because we're just attuned in that way.
I think Dave naturally has dibs on wolves.
yeah.
So Ryan has to go to
Foxes are cool.
Fair enough.
Dave has wolves and owls, Ryan has foxes and porgs, I think.
So we have to talk about that final battle scene with Luke and Kylo. Big surprise is that Luke's not actually there, but if you pay attention, there's quite a few clues.
I wish I could have seen it and not know that, but that's impossible.
That's like the drawback of the job, right?
I think it is fun sitting next to other people and knowing they're about to figure it out, and the audience reaction is like, ah!
Fair enough, yeah.
So I want to see if there's any that I've missed. Obviously, when Luke's out on the planet surface, you can't see his footprints. He's younger looking. He has his lightsaber that's not broken.
That's right.
When he touches Leia's hand, she obviously knows.
There's a moment of reflection and knowledge of that she's experiencing something that it's not what everyone else is experiencing, yeah. The sound design, again, helps in this because not only does Luke not leave any footprints, he doesn't make any sound as he steps on the crunchy salt. So,
Okay.
And the flakes that are blowing throughout that fight, they not only not land on him, but they don't land on his lightsaber. And they land on Kylo's and like, making a sound throughout.
And that was something that I noticed too, because when he brushes his shoulder off, there's nothing on his shoulder.
Yeah, exactly.
There's nothing there.
Yeah. That was another little pay attention kind of thing. So.
Another obvious one would be what Poe actually calls out is how did he get in here?
Right.
Yeah.
There's no way that Luke could have actually walked into that cave, but he's there.
I also love if you've read some of the other books and stuff, that Poe's insight into what's actually going on, because he had been working with Leia for many years to actually try and help locate her brother, and so I think we could say that's the first time he'd actually seen him.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a revelation for him too, like, oh no, wait, this is the guy I've been helping her look for years, and here he is. There's something more to this than what meets the eye.
And he just showed up on his own.
Right.
All of my hard
After
work.
all of those drawings and diagrams.
Entire comic series.
Another awesome detail is when R2's trying to convince Luke to leave the island, he plays Leia's hologram. Was that recreated?
Yeah, that's original archival footage. They went back to the dailies and found all the coverage, and they tried to recreate the video effect and added a little bit more distortion because it's so much older now. So it's a bad copy, or it's a powerful moment and a nice surprise. R2 has all this stuff. He just never thinks to bring it up because he's just R2. It's like, oh yeah, let me bring this up.
It's always in the here and now.
And it is for that moment that when Ryan was developing Last Jedi, that he asked J.J. Abrams specifically, can we switch BB-8
Yeah,
with R2-D2?
R2, yeah. And that was a change that was made because originally BB-8 was going to be with Rey. And then R2 was swapped at the very last bit. So.
And BB-8 stayed behind with Resistance.
One of the favorite things that people like to look out for, the cameos. There were a bunch hidden throughout here. Do you guys have like a running list? Do you have these memorized? Can you pick them out by timestamp?
Ryan's got a lot of friends, and a lot of friends love to be in movies. So yeah, I mean, the one that I was on my checklist looking for was Noah Sagan. If you've watched Ryan's movies, he's in all of them. And we're all wondering who he was going to be, and he's an X-Wing pilot with the name Stamaroni Stark. Does he make it? Well, I don't want to spoil anything. I hope for Noah's sake he does.
Yeah, it would be a shame to waste that hair.
Exactly.
He had gorgeous hair. Now wait, when you name these sort of background characters, is there any sort of convention that you follow? Is it something that's kind of fun you stick jokes in, or is it?
Occasionally, in all cases actually, I run it past Ryan. I run it past the filmmaker just to make sure that they didn't have anything in mind, or if they're cool with some of the stuff I'm trying to get away with. But in that case, Stark was actually given in the script, so it was just adding just a little bit more.
Okay, cool. So we also have one of the ones that I picked up on immediately was all 3 Hamill children.
Yes.
So who else do we have? Anybody?
We've got
Gareth
Gareth.
Edwin.
Gareth.
Oh, Gareth,
easily
how
Gareth,
perfect.
yes.
Of course. And I saw it
He
before.
got probably the most screen time, I would say.
Yeah.
And I knew it before I even saw his face because I know that hair anywhere.
I know,
Yeah.
right?
I was like, oh, of course.
And
it's
that
the
expression
Classic
that he
Gareth
gives.
expression. Classic.
Yeah, when the guy says salt, and he's just like,
Everyone who worked on Rogue One just looks and like, oh yeah, that I remember that.
I know that look. There's a nod to Rogue One in that he has R1 written in Orabesh on his tunic. So I thought that's a nice little.
That is nice.
But that pays off. It's full circle because Rom, producer of Ep8, and Ryan are in
Rogue One.
Yeah, they're the guys operating the Death Star cannon who have the worst job in the world.
Oh,
to
really?
stand
They're the guys
in
that kind of
in
lean
the laser
over
channel.
when the
although Gareth is in Rogue One too, as one of the Resistance. He's the guy that pulls the lever. So I
right.
wonder if he's the same guy, just he doesn't age.
Distant relative.
perhaps Leland.
That's right.
He just ages really well.
And then right after Gareth, or right before, we have Andrew Jack, who's our dialect coach. Well, I guess Andrew is actually not even a cameo anymore. He's a character.
He's a
Because
bona
he was
fide
in
Star
The
Wars
Force Awakens.
character.
But he's
Yeah.
a big presence on this set because he's our dialect coach who helps all of the actors with their accents if they need them, or helps them pronounce certain alien names or certain
And
planet.
he's the Resistance commander with the beard that stands up on the field.
Okay.
And he got a promotion. He was a major in Ep7, and now he's a general.
We also have
Edgar Wright, one of my favorite directors, makes a very brief little cameo.
With Joe Cornish, right? Last surviving members of the Resistance crew, well represented in the film community.
They
And
could
I-
make a great movie.
I don't think you could do a movie like this without Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
right?
Yes, that's right.
And that's a sneaky one.
JGL as the voice of Slow and Low, the concerned neighbor who wants to make sure you don't park on his beach.
Right. And his voice is, I mean, it's an accent that
He's doing
he
a
doesn't
voice.
really have. He's
He's
doing
doing
a
a
bit. So I honestly didn't pick up on that until we had a meeting planning for this.
Yeah.
And you told me, I was like, what?
In the rough cut of the movie, for the longest time, it was Ryan doing the temp of that voice, and I kind of got lulled into
I
a
love
sense
that
of.
because he had like kind of a hippie beach dude.
He was just a
like,
beach
yeah,
bum,
man,
you know?
like-
This is Easter eggy, but not like a cameo, but the shuttle that we figured it was Finn who botched that landing. And when we see it on the close-up, it's got parking violation stickers all over it.
Now, why it needed 50 stickers on it?
I don't know.
Well, it was an
quotas.
hourly sort of
Quotas, yeah,
thing.
that's right.
Brian Herring, who was one of the puppeteers that did BB-8 and did the Porgs, I know he's in there. You actually see a pretty good shot of him like yelling.
Well, I feel like at that point, like, you have a lot of people who are around anyway, and if you need bodies and you need people to fill out the base, you've got them there. Because I know I was talking to Ian Bucknell from LVP. He's like, oh yeah, a bunch of us were Resistance pilots, just sort of in the background.
Yeah, I've seen the picture of Ian and Trish.
Ryan's such a generous person. I'm sure he makes it quite easy. Like, oh, you're here, great, get in costume. And costume department's just very accommodating, because Ryan's such a generous filmmaker on set, and obviously in development, but also on set. You wouldn't think he's directing a movie because he's so relaxed, taking pictures and just trying to make everyone feel comfortable.
We didn't get cameos, but Rayne and I are kind of in the movie.
Well, our names get said in the movie. There's an alien that instead of saying an alien language, he's actually saying Pablo Rayne Curie.
The guy on the yacht who with the champagne glass. We named him
that's
Baron Otso,
fun.
I think is what I called him. And I believe, I may be wrong about this, we'll find out. I think that's Ryan's voice. I think it's
Oh, it could
Ryan
be.
doing that voice.
Yeah,
So.
it could be.
So that was a nod to myself, to Rayne, and Curie Hart, the head of the story group.
There's one more that I actually don't know, and I want you guys to tell me. Mark Hamill's credited twice in the
Oh,
credits.
that's right. He is also Dabusque, who's named after Bob Doucet, the editor. And if you're wondering
Bob
who that
Doucet
is,
is the best, by the way. Can we just give him a shout out?
and if
Did
you're
an amazing
wondering
job.
who Dabusque is, he's the little toad-like alien who keeps plugging BB-8 full of coins. So he's
One
the
of my
slot
favorites.
machine alien, and Mark Hamill does his voice.
Well, where was Warwick?
Warwick was in there a couple of times, but only one made the final cut. If you had read the Kanto Bites short stories, there's a trio called the Lucky Three, and Warwick and his daughter play two of them. And we see them in that kind of opening shot that sweeps over all the tables. And he was also this naked...
Also in from the Kanto Bite book.
Yeah, this naked, one-eyed...
Oh, our favorite guy, our
yeah.
chewed piece of gum alien.
yeah, the little shocked Cyclops character.
Kedpin Shucklop.
That part did not make the movie, but I'm hoping that it will surface someday, because there's a scene where the fathiers basically crash into a spa, and there's a bunch of aliens getting a massage, and next thing you know, fathiers are raining down from the ceiling. And
Yeah, it's really
it's
fun.
quite a memorable bit.
Yeah.
There are a number of pets in the Kanto Bites casino, including one dog that was designed to look like Gary. But the one that gets the most screen time is another. It's the weirdest thing. You know the shot of the bubble lady who lets out the opera scream? She has a floating dog that she lets go of in a moment of panic, and he goes flying around like a deflated balloon.
It's almost hard to see because it's actually really close to camera,
Yeah.
so you're just kind of looking past it. But if you know to look, it's pretty great.
If you see the movie in 3D, you could actually notice it more.
Seen it in 3D.
It's like right here in relation to the bubble lady.
In addition to cameos, throughout this whole thing, we're talking about inspirations and other movies that you might find nods to. Can you tell me a little bit about the Space Bear Movie Camp?
Yeah, we did Space Bear Movie Camp. I guess that was spring, summer of 2014.
2014, yeah. It was a way of Ryan communicating his cinematic sensibilities and the kind of things that he was looking to evoke and capture. So that's why I always try to tell people to understand Star Wars, look at stuff that's older than Star Wars, because it will really help and shape your cinematic language and your background, and you're able to communicate in that way, and it just becomes this great and helpful shorthand.
And I would add, too, that it was just a fun way that we got to get to know Ryan. We'd go to the premiere theater, which is beautiful and amazing, and in the middle of the day, and watch a movie together. And then Ryan, of course, would make us ice cream that we would eat afterward.
He would make it?
Well, he had pre-made the ice cream, and then he would serve the ice cream up on the roof deck after we'd watched the film, and we could all talk about the film. And it wasn't just a story group. We had people from visual effects and the art department there, so it was kind of part of the collegiate experience that we try to create here at Lucasfilm when we're developing a story with a filmmaker, so that we can just have fun getting to know each other and knowing each other's sensibilities and helping create this story together here at Lucasfilm, which is really wonderful when we can do it.
Yeah, that's a really special thing that we have here, and so thankful
And
for
you
it.
called it Space Bear Movie Camp.
Yes. Do we have time to get into that? We're like running out of time here.
We could
Yeah.
talk about how just that came out.
As far as Codenames go, Space Bear's kind of like
It's
left
out there.
Amazing.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
it's fantastic.
So we were like on B7 one day.
Up at
We
the
were like
conference room,
in
the executive conference room.
We were talking about how Luke had retreated and just taken himself out of the world, and for some reason I was like,
It was Legends of the
like
Fall,
Legends
right?
of the Fall, when Tristan just like goes into the woods at the end, and then we were like, but then he gets mauled by a bear. And then someone said, so Luke's like a space bear.
Luke has to find his space bear.
Yeah,
and
Luke
then,
has to find his space bear.
and then
they
that
kind of
became the code
stuck.
name for the movie. And then like Ryan, I think, wrote on a whiteboard in the Star Wars type title font, Space Bear.
That's right.
And it was forever known internally as Space Bear
And
from
then
that
his
moment.
code name in this during production was Space Bear.
Yeah, Luke was
Sir
Space Bear.
Space Bear.
Yeah.
And Ray's Goldilocks. And we can go on and on. but-
Yeah.
Yeah, every character, pretty much every character in The Last Jedi has a bear-based code name.
Yoda's Baby Bear.
Baby Bear, yeah. We'll let Ryan spill some more of
Yeah.
those, because those are
They're so fun.
Those are
And
so
they're
fun,
so
and so his
consistent.
sense of humor. So
Yeah.
Thank you all for taking time out of your super busy day to come and geek out with me a little bit. And all of you at home, if you haven't seen The Last Jedi yet, you're doing this wrong because we just spoiled it all. If you have seen it, which I hope you have, go see it again. It's still in theaters, and the Star Wars show will be back later this month. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.